Good afternoon, this is Nicholas from Gandora Gaming, and I'm here to discuss with you all Infernoids. This is one of my favorite archetypes of all time. It's definitely not better than Punk, but it's definitely in my top 10 favorite archetypes that I have ever played in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I've played a lot. I have 240 decks, and to say this is one of my favorites is a big thing, at least to me. And Infernoid is getting new support in the new dual terminal set. Not to mention they're getting indirect support in the form of the Diabell Star monsters. And they're getting indirect support and all the new fire support that we've been sprinkled throughout this year. So I feel like this is the best time to discuss Infernoids, what they do, what support they're getting, and what they can get to actually creep back into the meta game and take our hearts ablaze. So let's get straight into this. So first things first, for newer players or just players who joined in the last 3 or 4 years, you probably don't even know what an Infernoid is. And let's actually discuss that. So Infernoids are a fire fiend archetype that is a part of the dual terminal lore. And they came out when Shaddolls and Tellarknights, they're all part of that lore. So the Infernoids revolve around milling your entire deck and watching your opponent cry about it. The Infernoids is one of the best decks to utilize the grass looks greener and the cards like Monster Gates and Reasoning in order to mill their entire decks and then combo off from the graveyard. This deck is like Light Swarms and Tear Element, where the graveyard is their bread and butter. They want to mill their entire deck into the graveyard and then use the monsters from grave in order to spam the field and make really powerful XYZs, Link Summons, and occasionally Synchro Summons. The deck is very high roll. What I mean by that is there's a lot of times where you brick and a lot of times you mill your entire deck and then combo off until the sun goes down. This deck can do a lot, and to discuss this we gotta actually discuss what the Infernoids do and their restrictions and ultimately how they have meta implications going forward, because yes, they're getting new support, and yes, the Diabell Stars, which I mentioned earlier, do help them in new ways. But if you don't understand what this archetype's game plan is and how they work, me telling you these things won't register. You won't understand what I mean by this. So I'm going to go in depth on what the Infernoids do, how they summon themselves, what their game plan is, and how to go from here. So let's actually get straight into this. Infernoids only have one normal summon in the entire deck. That is Decatron. Decatron is their only normal summon, and his big thing is that when on normal or special, you can basically Foolish Burial any Infernoid from your deck, and then he copies the name, level, and effects of that Infernoid, which is really amazing. Basically, he's a Foolish Burial on legs, and the reason why he's so great is because he's your only normal summon. Cards like Reasoning and Monster Gate, if you are able to use them, you could basically mill up to like 20 to 30 cards, and then once you hit a Decatron, the Decatron will special summon itself, then the Decatron will then Foolish Burial, and then you go from there. And yeah, that's basically it. The Infernoids all have the ability to special summon themselves from the graveyard. At least the level 5 and higher ones do. The level 4 and lower ones do not. So let's actually discuss that. There is 3 stages to an Infernoid's life. Those are the level 1s, the 4s, the level 5 to 8s, and then of course our big boys, Anonku and Deviati, which I'll get into in a second. So let's actually discuss the level 4 to level 1s. So the level 1 to level 4 Infernoids, which I like to call stage 1, are Infernoids that can only be special summoned by, they can only be summoned. Let's be clear here. Like I said, none of the Infernoids besides Decatron can actually be normal summoned. So even though these guys are level 1 through 4, their only way to special summon these guys is from hand by banishing one Infernoid from either your hand or graveyard to put themselves onto the field. Now, all the Infernoids that are 1 through 4 all have the effect where during the main phase you contribute themselves to banish a card in your opponent's graveyard. And then, of course, on field, they have other beneficial effects. I think one of them is a Spell and Trap pop, the other one is a Monster pop, and things like that. Those are our little Infernoids. Our next wave of Infernoids, which I like to call stage 2, are level 5 to level 8 Infernoids. These Infernoids require 2 banishment of Infernoids from either our hand or graveyard to special summon themselves, but unlike the level 1 through 4s, they can special summon themselves from the graveyard. That's why the whole milling them until you can special summon them really comes in handy. And basically, their whole gimmick is that they can quick effect tribute themselves to then DD Crow a card in your opponent's graveyard, and they also have really beneficial effects on field. One of them, when it attacks, can banish a card from your opponent's extra deck. The other one can attack twice. One of them can then banish a card during the end of the battle phase. Really powerful effects. And like I said, Decatron can copy these guys, which is absolutely insane, because that means he can copy one of these guys, become their level, and then basically use their effects willingly, which is really strong. Not to mention, Decatron is a tuner monster, meaning you can use the level 5 to level 8 in order to actually synchro climb, which is a really cool mechanic. Now, this deck doesn't really want to synchro climb because of their big restriction, which we'll go into in a second, but it is really cool to use the multiple different levels that the Infernoids come in order to actually make some really powerful synchros. Infernoids come from every level in the game. They literally go level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which is absolutely crazy, which is really cool. So, and because their level 1 guy is a tuner that level modulates, you can actually make some really powerful synchros, which is really cool. Next we have our big boys. These are Anonku and Deviati. These are our boss monsters, and they are the only 2 Infernoids that require 3 banishes. But like the level 5 and higher Infernoids, they can special summon themselves from the graveyard by banishing Infernoids from our hand or graveyard. And these guys are no joke. Let's actually discuss the big guys and their meta implications, because they're absolutely insane. Deviati is a harpy, actually no, he's a heavy storm, and that is a very powerful effect. So on special summon, Deviati just harpy storms the entire field, which is absolutely insane. Also, he can tribute himself in order to negate a monster effect and banish it. Anoku, who's your level 10, is the opposite. So Anoku, when he special summons, he dark holes the field besides himself, and then he can tribute himself to negate a spell and trap on the field, or in hand, or however, which is really strong. So Deviati is your monster negate, and Anoku is your spell and trap negate. Anoku basically dark holes the field, and Deviati basically heavy storms the field. These are very powerful monsters, and the fact that Decatron can copy their effects is really solid. Now, Decatron can't copy their board wiping effects because he gets summoned and then copies the effects, so he only gets the spell and trap negates or the monster negates, but that is still very powerful effects. Now, all the Infernoids are non-once return special summon themselves onto the field. So as long as you have the Infernoids in order to fuel their summoning conditions, you can spam the field with as many Infernoids as you want, which is one of the really fun things about this deck. So you can really link summon your heart's content by using Infernoids, and then just keep resummoning them using their conditions in order to just keep link summoning. Also, you can XYZ summon. Because they level modulate, and because you're playing so many different levels, you have access to not only rank 8, but rank 7s, rank 6s, and a whole bunch of different levels, which is absolutely incredible. This deck specializes in making a lot of rank 7s, 6s, and 8s, also making a lot of link summons. Link summons was probably one of the best things for Infernoids because they only have one mechanic, which is fusion summoning, which we'll get into once we go over the spells and traps. But ultimately, the fact that links can basically create really powerful boss monsters, and all you have to do is resummon your Infernoids, is really strong. Now, one of the biggest issues with Infernoids, and the reason why links fill this win condition, is that Infernoids cannot exceed the level 8 on field. The reason why I said synchro summoning is a lot harder to do in Infernoid is because once you get level 8 on field, or a level 8 or higher monster on field, you can no longer use the non-once return special summon effects of any of your Infernoid monsters. So you might have the like requirements in order to spam the field, but if you have like a level 8 on field, you can no longer spam the field with them. That's why this deck specializes in XYZs and link summonings, because links and XYZs do not have a level. So you can just keep reusing the Infernoids, make really generic boss monsters, and just win that way. Yes, you can also access synchros because again, Decatron is a tuner, but you must keep in mind the restriction of levels when you're playing the deck. That's one of the only restrictions this deck has, and that's why it is very splashable. Infernoids had a lot of meta competitiveness and a lot of different decks. One of my favorite versions, and the reason why I love Infernoid, is Layered Darkness Infernoid. So if you don't know, Layered Darkness has really great in synergy with the Infernoid monsters. Layered Darkness allows you to tribute your opponent's monsters to fill the requirements of tribute effects, which is absolutely insane. Because, like I said, all the Infernoids, level 5 or higher, can quick effect tribute themselves to either DD Crow your opponent's cards or to negate and banish either a monster or spell. So basically, you just control the board using Layer of Darkness, and then tribute your opponent's monsters to either DD Crow them or to negate really powerful spells or monsters. It's a very cool strategy, and it's probably one of the last times Infernoids have seen meta relevancy. Other formats where Infernoids have shined, they're probably most infamous and most powerful format had to be Zodiac format. Zodiac Infernoid, which you can watch on the history of Yu-Gi-Oh!, was actually a very powerful meta contending Zodiac build. Basically utilized cards like Grass Looks Greener and a whole bunch of really powerful mill cards, and you use the Zodiac engine in order to just combo off to your heart's content and ultimately make some really busted boards. Since the Zodiacs made XYZs, you didn't have to worry about them clogging up your levels, meaning as long as you just milled and you don't really have a normal summon to an Infernoid besides Decatron, so you can easily normal summon a Zodiac, do your Zodiac plays, and then just use your Infernoid cards to then do Infernoid plays. It was a really powerful format, and that was really the best time Infernoids had in the meta game. Now, Infernoids, once the new sets come out, is getting some really busted cards. Those cards being the Diabell Stars. Diabell Stars, which are coming out in Age of Overlords, have huge meta implications for this deck, for the simple fact that now you have multiple ways to search Decatron. One of the biggest issues with Infernoid is consistency. They have some really powerful spells and traps, which we'll go talk about in a little bit, but their monsters, like I said, all of them besides Decatron, require you to banish at least one Infernoid to even put them onto the field. Meaning, if you have a handful of Infernoid, you're just minusing yourself. That's one of the only issues of Infernoids. It's a very high rolly deck. You want to see all your spells and traps, not really the monsters as much. So let's actually discuss the new Diabell Star cards. So basically using these really powerful Snake Eyes spells or Diabell Star treasure spells. I don't know what they are going to be called in TCG, but basically their whole gimmick is that they can actually search level 1 fire monsters, meaning you can actually search out Decatron and do your combo that way. Not to mention Diabell Star, the level 7, does not require you to ultimately you don't have to normal summon it. It can special summon itself by discarding any card or destroying any card from your hand or field. Basically meaning that you can just send a useless Infernoid from hand, summon out Diabell Star, get the entire Diabell Star engine going without using your normal summon, and then using the Infernoids is just material to do that. It's a very powerful engine, and it might have some meta implications going forward. Now, the real thing that's going to push Infernoid into the meta game has to be the new dual terminal set. We already been confirmed that Infernoid with ice barriers will be getting at least one new card and a lot of good reprints in this set. Now, based on the number of cards in this set, most likely Infernoid is not just going to get one card. Most likely they're going to get several cards to ultimately boost this aging strategy. Now, that is absolutely insane for them because Infernoids, they honestly just need more consistency. I think all their monsters are insane. They really don't need new monsters. Like maybe like one or two. like just modern day monsters. But really, the best thing about Infernoids is their spells and traps. So let's actually go over that. So Infernoid spells are called void spells. They actually shared this with Infernity. Infernity also used void spells, which is a very, very funny thing because when Infernity got support, it actually was like a little boost to Infernoid, which was absolutely lovely. So let's go over the void spell cards and the trap cards. There are some really, really powerful ones. Alright, so let's actually now go over the Infernoid spells and traps. So first things first, we have Void Banishment. This is a continuous spell, and it basically has the effect where once per turn, you can discard one card, add one Void spell or trap from your deck to your hand, accept Void Banishment, or Noid the Void. Also, you can't normal or special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except Infernoid monsters, which I guess is one of the other restrictions to this deck. But again, this restriction is very minimum because you can definitely get around it and then use this effect later in your combo. It also has an effect where Infernoid monsters, monsters that battle your opponent's monsters, out of damage calculation, you can send this card to graveyard and banish both monsters. So basically, you can use Void Banishment, send it to grave, banish both attacking monsters. You can banish their boss monster and your monster, which is pretty strong as a continuous spell. Now, the cream of the crop when it comes to the void spells and traps have to be Void Imagination. Now, Void Imagination is your other spell card. Basically, there's 3 continuous spells in the archetype. Void Imagination is probably one of the reasons why I fell in love with Infernoid, because it's one of the most creative ways to fusion summon. I didn't really mention this, but Infernoid, yes, it wants to specialize in Link summoning and XYZ summoning, but funny enough, the only Infernoid extra deck monster is a fusion. Now, the reason why we have this is because Void Imagination is our fusion spell, and it's actually one of the most cracked fusion spells of all time. So, let's actually go over Void Imagination. So, Void Imagination, which is a custom card that came out like 5 years ago, or actually longer than that, basically says Infernoid monsters whose you control, whose original levels are 2 or higher, become level 1, and all battle damage they inflict to your opponent is halved. Now, that part isn't a big deal when it comes to halving their battle, because don't forget, you can just use them as material. But the really insane part about this card is that it makes them level 1, meaning you can just spam the field with a whole bunch of Infernoids and ultimately combo off that way. Now, you do need to be careful, because while they're level 1s, you can't really make XYZs, but it definitely helps you link climb a lot easier, so you gotta be careful with that. But the real reason why we're playing Void Imagination is its second effect, where you can send this card to the graveyard, fusion summon one Infernoid fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of field as fusion material. My bad, I misspoke. From your deck and your hand and your side of field as fusion material. And then if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck and you do not have a monster special summoned from the extra deck, you can also use 6 monsters from your deck as fusion material. So basically, this card basically says, hey, you can Foolish Burial 6 monsters and then fusion summon a really powerful fusion monster. Let's actually go over the infusion monster for Infernoids. So that is Infernoid Tierra. Tierra is one of the most creative boss monsters in the game. Basically, it gains effects depending on the number of material used. Alright, so let's actually discuss the multiple effects of Tierra. So Tierra says, basically, if you use 3 or more Infernoids, each player sends the top 3 cards from their extra deck to the graveyard. Not top 3, my bad. Just send 3 cards from their extra deck to graveyard. So this card really works good with sending some really powerful fusion monsters, synchro monsters from the extra deck, and then just popping off from there. In the old days, you used to send Elder Entity Nentis in order to pop the field, but you can also send things like Herald of Archetype, the Shadal cards, the new Garuda, the Draw You a card. There's a lot of really powerful cards this card just sends, and the fact that it sends from both players' extra decks is really amazing. Not just 3. Don't forget, you're at minimum using like 6, so let's actually go over the 5 or more cost. So if you use 5 or more Infernoids, each player sends the top 3 cards from their deck to graveyard. So on normal summoning, or at least on special summon, this card sends 3 from the extra deck, and at the same time mills the top 3 of their deck to grave. If you use 8 or more Infernoids, each player returns up to 3 of their banished cards to the graveyard, which is really, really good because basically allows you to recycle your Infernoids that are banished. So it also saves your Infernoids that are banished, which are really, really good. And then finally, if you use 10 or more Infernoids, each player sends their entire hand to the graveyard, which is a really, really insane effect. Now that 10, you never really even get to that 10. To be honest, you never really get to that 8. You're usually getting to 5 and 3, but either way, the 5 and 3 effects are so insane that doesn't really matter. The fact you can just send 3 monsters from your extra deck to graveyard, and the fact that you can just send mill 3 cards from your deck is absolutely incredible. And this is one of the best boss monsters in the game. Also, it's 3,400 attack, so it's not like a weakling, which is really, really insane. Not to mention, it's also an Infernoid, so if your opponent clears this monster, you can also just banish it from the graveyard in order to then spam the field with Infernoids again, which is absolutely incredible. Let's actually go over the third and final spell card, and then we'll go over the trap cards. There's only one trap card we need to go over, which is Void Feast. So this should be really quick. So Void Apocalypse is the Infernity card I was talking about earlier, where Infernities and Infernoids share support. Void Apocalypse says you can discard 1 card, send 1 Fiend monster from your deck to graveyard. You can also send this face-up card from your spell and trap zone to graveyard to send Infernoid monsters with different names from your hand or deck to the graveyard up to the number of monsters your opponent controls that were special summoned from the extra deck. So this card, Mass Foolish Burials. Now, you can only use each effect of this guy once per turn. So you can't do the discard 1, mill, and then mill by sending it to effect, but it's still really, really good. So finally, we gotta talk about Void Feast. Now, Void Feast is the only trap card that is actually playable in the Infernoid strategy. Now, depending on your play style, which, by the way, Infernoid is one of those archetypes where it doesn't have just one play style. There's control variants, there's aggro variants. This deck is very powerful in the fact it can flex into many ways. There's a lot of going second Infernoid decks. There's a lot of going first control-based Infernoid decks. You can probably play Infernoid however you like. Layer Darkness and Void Feast favor more of a control style of build, but in older formats like Zodiac, there's a lot of older aggro, wombo combo, use Lava Golem, trigger your opponent's monsters, OTK them with the Infernoids, and completely board break the crap out of them with powerful spell cards. But Void Feast is definitely more the control side, but it's such a powerful card that even the aggro decks still play this card. So Void Feast basically says, hey, it's a trap card, you flip it up, and you can special summon Infernoids from your deck equal to the level 8. So what you do is you special summon out 2 Decatrons, which equal level 1. So 1 Decatron, 2 Decatron, that's 2. So then you can special summon Sajet from your deck, and Sajet will be your level 6. So basically you get 2 Decatrons on the field and a Sajet on your field for a free trap card. And because they're special summoned, you can use the Decatrons to Foolish Burial 2 more Infernoids, and then those Decatrons will copy their levels and effects. So, for example, you can go Void Feast, special summon out Sajet, which is a quick effect DD Crow, and then you can use one of the Decatrons to copy Onoku, and you can use the other one to copy Deviati, and now you have a spell trap negate and a monster negate, which is absolutely incredible. It's one of the most powerful spells and traps in the deck, and it just shows you that the spell cards and the trap cards are what really makes his deck shine. Yes, the Infernoids have some really, really interesting effects. Yes, they're non-once-a-turn special summons from the graveyard, so you can just mill them and you just keep spamming the field, which is cool. But the best part about this deck is basically the really, really powerful spells and traps you get to play. Void Feast literally special summons 3 from deck during your opponent's turn, and Void Imagination just says, hey, your opponent controls extra deck monsters. Basically, Foolish Burial 6 monsters from your deck and make a fusion monster. Then that fusion monster mills 3 from extra deck and deck. It's just really, really insane. And the other one, Void Apocalypse. That card literally says, "Oh, your opponent has extra deck monsters. Well, you send this card to the graveyard. You foolish burial as many Infernoids as you want, equal to the number of extra deck monsters they control. I mean, you can, let's say they have a whole combo wombo board. You can just basically foolish burial for like 5 cards, which is absolutely insane. And just one of the really, really reasons why Infernoid is so powerful and so good, because yes, their monsters are a little lackluster in the fact that yes, they're a little outdated. Like how good is like a monster pop, a spell pop, in the form of the Omni Negates that we have nowadays. But the fact that they can be cheated out of the deck so easily, and the fact that this deck can mill so well, definitely shows you the power of Infernoid going forward. Now, I want to now spend the next this last part of the video just talking about what Infernoid needs to be competitive again. Because yes, the DLL stars are great, and Layer of Darkness is great, and there's a lot of really powerful links and exercises you can play, which I can make a whole video with recommendations from. Alright, so we're finally at the end point of the video. We went over what Infernoid are, how they play, their game mechanics, all that. Now it's time to talk about what I hope for when it comes to new support to push Infernoid back into the metagame and set all our hearts ablaze. So let's actually go into this, what I'm hoping for with the new Infernoid support. So first things first, like I said earlier in this video, the biggest issue with Infernoids has to be consistency. To play Infernoid in modern day, you have to play at least 20 Infernoids in your deck, which is a lot. That is a lot of Infernoids, and as much as I love them all, and they all have like really powerful utility options, because yes, Spell and Trap Pop is great, yes, a Monster Pop is great, yes, a Spin Back is great, but the fact that it requires you to, they don't be normal summons, they have to be special summoned by banishing other cards, and the fact that you can draw a handful of Infernoids is a big issue. Now, this deck is playing a lot of spells and traps, like I went over, but that doesn't stop you from having the option to draw 5 Infernoids. That's still a huge possibility. So ultimately what I recommend is more consistency monsters. If we do get new Infernoid monsters in the main deck, I would want them to be able to help you cheat out the requirements for the Infernoids. A good example of this would have to be the generator support. If you remember the generator support we just got in, I think it was Photon Hypernova, one of the level 9s that they got. I think it's, I forgot her name, but she basically says, hey, you reveal her, special summon herself, and then special summon another generator from your hand. I would really like if Infernoid got something like that, where one Infernoid can cheat out another Infernoid from hand, allowing you to then just go straight into other game plans like that. Or maybe there's an Infernoid where you can special summon it by discarding another Infernoid, and then on summon it searches for an Infernoid monster. That would be really, really cool as well. That's really it when it comes to the monsters. I would like it to, I don't really know what level it could be. We have almost every level in the game. So like I said, I'm not really looking for new main deck monsters. When it comes to the extra deck, there's 2 options I'm really looking forward to. I hope we either get a Infernoid Link monster or another Infernoid Fusion monster, preferably a Link monster. The reason why I say this is because, like I said, Infernoid, it feels like they were built for the Link mechanic. Even though they came out, I believe, like 4 years before Links are even conceived in Yu-Gi-Oh's eyeballs, but basically, Infernoid live and breathe the Link summon. Like, the fact that Links don't have, they're generic, they don't have levels, there's really not really any restrictions to them, that you can just really pop off. Appaloosa, Avermax, Equimax. There's so many powerful Link monsters that Infernoid have access to, that I just feel like, because they're so generic and you just keep splashing them, I feel like it'd be really cool if we got like a generic Link 2 Infernoid that can just allow us to make our hands more consistent. Maybe like the Dark Lord Angel, the one, the Dark Worlds. You know what I'm talking about? The Lucifer archetype. It would be really cool if we had like a Dark Witch in the form of a Link 2 for Infernoid. It was like pitch an Infernoid, search an Infernoid, something like that. Something that can actually like build the consistency of the deck. Maybe it's like it's a Link 2, when it's Link Summon, you discard a card in order to add a Void spell or trap for our deck to hand. That'd be really, really good. Another thing that I really want, which is one of my main thing that I think will definitely get back Infernoid back into the meta. If Konami is not going to give us Monster Gate and Reasoning back to more than one copy per deck, then I do think Infernoid should deserve its own reasoning type card in Archetype. And what I mean by that is, it'd be really amazing if Infernoid had a card like Monster Gate, like Reasoning, where you get to mill your deck, but you are stuck into Infernoids. Maybe that's what they need. Because honestly, I love this deck to death, but the fact that they hit Monster Gate due to a gimmicky FTK that was like Earth Machines is so stupid. Like, Monster Gate is only seeing play in Infernoid. It's the only deck that can actually abuse the card. And the fact that it got hit, not because of Infernoid, but because of some gimmicky FTK where you had to play like 50 level, not 50, like 30 level 10 machine monsters, including the Drytron rituals, in order to FTK your opponent using, what's it called, Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon to burn you for 2,000 damage and then recycle it. It is so stupid. They should have just hit the burn card. I don't know why Monster Gate had to pay for its sins. Reasoning too. Reasoning, I don't know why Reasoning's on the ban list, to be perfectly honest with you. Yes, it's a really powerful card, but if you ever read Reasoning and Monster Gate, there's not really that any decks besides Infernoid that can actually use this card. Like, Reasoning says your opponent chooses a level 1 through 12, and then you mill the top cards of your deck until you hit that level. If your opponent called it right, it gets sent to graveyard. If they hit it wrong, then it gets special summoned onto the field. Well, think about the decks that like the milling, Light Swarms, Tier Elements. Like, I guess Tier Elements for one extent, maybe Reasoning can't come back, but Monster Gate says tribute a, a monster on your field, and then you mill until you hit another monster. Like, what deck is playing Monster Gate? Like, I'll be perfectly honest with you, there isn't any. And same thing with Reasoning. Like, maybe there's some Tier Element shenanigans that might be existing there, but to be honest, I feel like Tier Elements and the state they're in and how many hits that deck has taken, I don't think Reasoning going back to 3 will push that deck into the Tier 0 status it was literally last year. I just don't think so. So personally, the biggest fix for Infernoid would just be on the ban list. But if we had to get new cards, I would like an in-archetype Monster Gate. That would be really, really powerful. One of my favorite cards is Monster Gate, because one of the coolest things you can do is going second, have Layer Darkness on field, activate Monster Gate, tribute your opponent's monster as cost, then you get to mill your deck until you hit a Drytron, a freaking Infernoid, damn, I'm blanking on the name, the level 1, I kept saying it, Drytron, Devitron, you know what I'm talking about. I already spent like 25 minutes talking about it. It's been a long time recording this video, so I'm a little off, but yeah, that's really about it. That's how I'd fix Infernoid. Like I said, give them a Monster Gate, give them Reasoning back. If you can't give them those, then make a retrain of it in Infernoid as an archetype card. Give them a new extra deck monster, either a Link 2 that's not generic, but a Link 2 that helps benefit Infernoids and consistency wise, or give them a new fusion boss monster. We only have one monster in the extra deck. It'd be really cool to have more targets for Void Imagination. But that's really all I have to say about that. I hope you all enjoy. Don't do anything stupid. And I'll really see you all in the next one. Tell me in the comments what you want to fix Infernoid with. And are you excited for the new dual terminal set? We know Ice Barriers is getting its support as well in there. What other dual terminal archetypes do you want to see support? And that's really about it. I hope you all enjoy. Don't do anything stupid. And I'll see you all next one. Bye-bye.